Hello, everybody, and welcome to No More Mondays podcast. I am your host, Angie Callan. Does money make you nervous? Did you just get a little sweaty when I asked that question, right? Would you love to make a change, start a business, get a new job, move to a new place, but fear around money keeps you from making moves? Personal finance is the bane of many's existence, and we are going to break it down today as we welcome Troy Holt, financial educator, to the show. Troy is passionate about empowering professional women and business owners to take control of their financial future. He educates and guides people like me to deploy wealth building strategies that mitigate tax liability while creating financial stability and a legacy. Like me, Troy believes we all deserve the opportunity to thrive and reach our potential. You all know how much I love that word. And he's here to help us build the financial literacy and financial foundation we need to do it. And I'm excited to learn from him today. So I hope you will all help me welcome Troy Holt to the show. Troy, welcome to No More Mondays.
Angie, thank you so much. Thank you for allowing me to be here and be a part of the podcast. I'm truly honored and grateful for the opportunity. And I love the title.
Thanks. Do you want I don't know if I've ever okay, so let's just railroad the conversation 30 seconds
Okay.
in. I don't know if I've ever actually shared where the No More Mondays title came from. And since you mentioned it, I'll share it that in brainstorming what we were going to call this, we went through all different
Hmm.
iterations, and it somehow we stumbled upon the like movie quotes and
Okay.
things from movies
Mhm.
that could possibly inspire something. And I thought of the movie Office Space,
Okay.
which of our generation, like key, like
Right.
cornerstone movie, and how they talk about having a case of the Mondays. And I
Okay.
was like, oh my gosh, a case of the Mondays, no more Mondays. And magically, here we are.
Yes.
And I'm glad that you are here. And I am glad that you're going to share some wisdom because I have a feeling money is the reason a lot of people have cases of the Mondays. And
Yeah.
I'm hoping we can kind of break that down today.
Yes.
But before we get into kind of advice stuff, I would love to know how you got into this world and kind of what your background in finance is. So fill everybody in on a little of that.
Yeah. So growing up, one of the things is I used to see, on television and sometime in real life, I would see the person that carried the briefcase and wore the suit seemed to be made the most money and looking professional and things like that. And I said that's what I want to be. I want to be that type of guy because I'm not a mechanic. I'm not a construction. None of that. Matter of fact, I hate cutting grass. And my next house, my next house that I buy, it can have all concrete, no trees and no grass. It wouldn't bother.
Zero
Yeah,
scaping for
yes.
Troy.
So a friend of mine told me about an opportunity with a company. It's called Ameriprise, but at the time it was American Express Financial Advisors. And so he was actually there. And so he told me about the opportunity. So I went and applied because I had always kind of had some interest in finances. And then that's how I got involved in finances, and I really wanted to, when I got involved, uh, I seen there was a big discrepancy or a gap, especially in my community, African American community. And I really wanted to help educating. I love, when I can educate somebody and a light bulb come on, and it just really does something to you. A light bulb come on you, and you can educate someone. And then, so I proceeded over the years, been with a couple of companies, and now, I'm independent. I do have some backing, but I'm basically an independent, and so I kind of still on the education piece, just really trying to educate people on personal finance and how important it is.
Well, and I love that I can already tell as part of your brand,
Mhm.
let's make financial planning and finance and money accessible and approachable.
Correct.
And it's funny because I also remember that whole corporate America picture is, I feel, what we were so taught to strive for growing up in like the 80s and early
Mhm.
90s. And now I wish that, you can't see Troy, I can. He is sitting here chatting to me in a navy blue, really close to the career benders blue
Yeah.
t-shirt, right?
Yeah.
So no pretense.
Mhm.
No, I'm trying to be the guy with the suit, because a lot of times the people, that's a shell and a cover.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate that perspective. And one of the things I'm curious to talk about more from your own experience building a business in an entrepreneurial endeavor is how did you come to identify the niche that you work with and decide to even go like further out on your own? And I ask this for one specific reason, is it because financial professionals tend to be pretty risk averse.
Hmm.
And I think that that's just a good little tidbit for some people out there to hear, whether they're finance or not, that
Hmm.
they're risk averse to doing something as, as scary as kind of going out on your own. So I'm curious how you approached that transition and giving an idea of people like how you did that, how you identified the niche, and how you kind of did all of that with the risk aversion in mind.
Well, a part of the the niche or area, because my focus is on women, and one of the things is started kind of looking at my book of business, and I would say about 98% of my clients are women. It was not anything that I designed or picked out. It just happened to be my book of business, and a lot of the what happened many times, I would have a female to reach out to me, say, hey, look, I have children, I want to set something up with them. I want to make sure they're protected. And so that just kind of evolved. Then I started doing more research, about women and how I can really impact them. And so what I found out that, especially in America, for every dollar that a white male makes, a white female makes 82 cents on a dollar, but a black female makes 68 cents on the high end and 58 cents on the low end. Women are some of the most the demographics. They're the largest poor in America. So a lot of the reason is because they don't always get compensated as equivalent to men, but also women have a tendency to be the ones that will take off from work to take care of a loved one who maybe is sick or take care of children. So what happens is when they do that, they miss out on promotions, they miss out on opportunities, they miss out on money because they are not because they became the caretaker of someone. And so I don't think it's fair that they get penalized because they're helping us men to continue to have our business, our life, or whatever else it may be. And so I'm a champion and support for women. I really think, we should promote women more and push them, and really back them. And then plus, I have a wife. We've been married going on 32 years next month. So supportive of her. So
That's
yes,
amazing.
thank you.
First,
Thank
congrats.
you.
Second, there's a tidbit of practicality in something you said
Hmm.
that I want to flag for some people
Sure.
out there, that if you're an entrepreneur and you're trying to identify your niche, sometimes it's sitting right there in front of you
Correct.
if you'll just look at the data,
Yeah.
which is what you did when you looked at the book of business. But then I think that gave you this probably spark of inspiration to look deeper into
Yeah.
probably why they were reaching out to you and how much service there was available to that niche
Correct.
of which you could serve.
Definitely. And it was like, it was kind of, doing the deeper dive, it was kind of an eye opener. And I'm like, this is not fair. This is not, it shouldn't be like that. We really should. And some women can do some jobs better than men, and more effective. And so I just became a champion of women. And so then, dealing with the risk, I think people should always take calculated risks. I don't think people should take foolish risks. I think it should be calculated risk. A person should look at, the pros and cons. Also look at one of the things that I learned this, and I'm also a man of faith and also a minister. And one of the things that I come to realize is to expect the unexpected. If we start taking that mindset and that attitude, then it won't throw us off when things of life hit us unexpectedly, because things happen in life. But there's a mindset that, because I'm a Christian, I'm a child of God, that nothing will happen to me. I'm supposed to go through life and everything's supposed to be just a roller coaster where I'm on top or mountaintops, and it's not the case. So I think that you should calculate those risks and then look at, what if this happens, then how do I plan for that?
Yeah, it's very easy in that situation to kind of stick your head in the sand. And
Hmm.
I'm going to say something that could be off color to some, but that Christian
Hmm.
mentality of well, I'll just pray about it.
Right. Correct.
But sometimes God intends us to take action
Correct.
in order we have to be part of the solution that he has in mind for us. Yeah, we'll work through the challenges, but just doing nothing
Right.
isn't necessarily doing our part in it. And I think what you bring up is a really good point around kind of the financial misstep
Mhm.
of not being prepared, right? Tell me more about that and how can we like even practically avoid that? How do we get prepared for the unexpected from an actionable plan?
So one of the things that I always teach was two things I share with people. So we teach is a principle called the 7 money milestones, and it's basically a roadmap or a blueprint for a person to achieve financial independence. Excuse me. Number one is a financial education, getting with someone you trusted advisor. Start, getting that education. You can read books and also go on YouTube, but be careful with a lot of things online. Some of it is misinformation, so you got to be careful. But getting started with that education. Number two is a proper protection. So making sure you protected in the event if a loss, whether it's death or whether it's an injury on the job or a business, protection there. Number three is an emergency fund. We talked about, the transmission fall out, if the refrigerator stopped working. So have an emergency fund for those. Number four is debt management. Debt is huge in America. Controlling the debt, managing the debt. Number five is cash flow. So figuring out ways to increase your cash flow. That could either be looking at if a person's employee W-2, changing that when they get more money in the house, maybe a side gig, maybe a side business. Number six is growing wealth. When we get that in place, we look at growing wealth. And number seven is protecting that wealth, wills and trust. We see that Aretha Franklin and Prince, both of them passed, did not have any wills or estate planning.
Yeah, or there was a random will shoved in the couch. Like
Correct. Yes.
how
Yes.
nuts is that for
Yes.
somebody with that kind of wealth to protect?
Correct. And I'm like, wow, these people, they even had the money that they could spend to hire the attorneys to put the
To
plan.
litigate
Yeah.
that for what was it, like 3
Yes,
years?
yes, yes. So that's, so those are we talk about those things, getting those things in place. But one of the things that and I say this on a lot of podcasts, and one of the things that a person can start today is simple. And people may ask, well, what thing that a person can start to say today? And the one thing that I will say is to pay yourself first. So what I tell people, like me, so again, being a man of faith, so God gets his first, and then I pay myself first, and then the bills and all that come next. Most people, they pay all the bills, and then they give what's left over, they pay themselves. And I say it's not, the issue is not the amount, whether it's $1 or $10.
It's the mental
It's the mental and
action.
the discipline. And once you get in the
Yeah.
habit of that, and now you can set up things automatically. If you get a paycheck, direct deposit, have a portion go in there. Because if you can't put away $1, you definitely can't put away $10. And if you can't put away $10, you can't put away $100. So I tell people one simple thing that they could start today is start paying themselves first. And I remember there were some times that I implemented this years ago, but I had to, by the end of the month, I had to take the money and move it to still pay bills because I didn't
Yeah.
have enough. But the discipline, the mindset, now it's automatic because I've done it, so
Yep.
much. And so I got in the habit of that. So that's one of the things that I would share as a practical tip that a person can start today.
Well, I want to get more into practical tips in a minute.
Sure.
But I also you just dangled you dangled 7 carrots with the 7-point framework. So I'm like, "Oh man, where do we go?" But I want to stop and address something that you just kind of opened the door to, which is the entrepreneurial
Hmm.
mindset when it comes to money,
Hmm.
because there is a lot of that's where I think that risk aversion we were talking about a little bit ago kind of comes in, and people have that they have the assumption, and it's not always true, that entrepreneurship is not as stable when it comes to the income. You can't guarantee it, and all these kinds of things that in some ways you've got more control over your business income than you have over whether your employer decides to keep you employed or not. But that's a different show,
Right.
Troy.
Yes.
In the point you brought up is that it is very empowering as a business owner to set up payroll for yourself,
Yes,
right?
yes,
Because it is it's just like creating an actual business
yes,
entity, which from a financial perspective is a risk aversion
true.
tax liability decision as well. But there is nothing more gratifying than putting yourself on autopilot payroll and seeing that money come in every single cycle, even if it isn't the full amount of money that
Yeah.
you're going to pay yourself. If it's $1,000 a month, it's just kind of taking that step to formalize and mentally say, I'm in business, I'm going to pay myself first.
I did an interview recently on my podcast. Matter of fact, it was last week, so it hadn't came out yet, and it was with Olivia. I can't think of Olivia's last name right now, and so she kind of helped business owners. And one of the things that she brought out, which was huge, she made mention, a shout out to Olivia, but she made mention that many business owners, when they're starting out, there could be a startup, and so they start scaling the business. And she said what they don't do is they don't pay themselves. They said, well, when I get to this point, and then when I get to this point, and she said they should have um, incremental in their business plans. That okay, so it could be $50 a week, whatever the number is, and just incremental start paying themselves first because they end up burning themselves out. And they may have a business that have grown to $1 million in revenue, but they are only getting paid zero or $10. And they should start putting a salary in them for themselves incrementally over time. So I thought that was some great advice.
Yeah, totally great advice. And so, I would say first practical piece of advice Troy has here is set up consistent pay for yourself.
Yes.
Even if you end up having to also do draws or
Mm.
something like that in addition, just create some sort of consistency for yourself because that it's mental, it starts a foundation for cash
True.
flow
True.
and all those kinds of things. And I'm also curious now that we're in this little mindset segment
Hmm.
here for a second. What do you think? And whether it's somebody who is an entrepreneur or employed,
Hmm.
what do you think it is about money? I'm going to make you play therapist for a minute,
Okay.
Troy. What do you think it is about money that keeps us from thriving and reaching our potential?
What is it about money? Oh, ooh, that's a tough one. So one thing I think it is what happens. I think people go to the extreme. So one person is poor growing up. So when they get the opportunity, they never want to be poor. So that's a big fear of them. So they start being motivated or driven by the fear. I think what happened is the fear drives them sometimes to greed. This is not everybody. This is now we're coming from a therapist, psychological type, and that fear end up motivating and pushing them toward greed. So they're going to do anything. They're going to compromise their principles and whatever because they don't want to get in that position again. And I can understand where they're coming from. I think the other side of that same thing is you have some people that may have never experienced any tough time. Uh, so for them, money is just not important because they've never experienced. Oh, some people that the light's about to get cut off, the car's about to get repossessed. So for them, they've never had that negative aspect of money. So money to them is not motivated, and I'm not necessarily knocking them. My philosophy is relationships over revenue, people over profits, and impact over income. And so,
Oh, can you say all three of those again?
yes,
Because there is, I want to say upfront that you're 100% right on the. A lot of times, our relationship with money, most of the time, our relationship from money stems about however we were raised, and there's no right or wrong because we can't change it. It just is what it is. But you do have the ability to shift those beliefs.
true.
And tell me what those three are again
Yeah.
because I loved them.
Relationships over revenue. So I think people should always put the relationship over revenue. So, in other words, if you have to walk away from a deal because it's not a good fit, it doesn't place the client or customer in a better position, I think you should always pick relationships over revenue. I think you should pick people over profits. We know most corporations in America does not do that. That's why they don't keep great people. The people are what make you help you build that organization. So put the people over profits. And I'm not saying a company shouldn't make profits. They're not in a business. They're not a nonprofit. They're in it to make profit. But I think they should make put the people over profits. And then also we should always be looking at how can I make an impact over the income? Because the impact is going to be a legacy. It's going to be a long term. Income is fine, and you can have it right there in that short term. But the impact that you can leave and the legacy can you leave could go on for generations and years.
I love that 3. Ooh, it's so and here's the thing is that again, the fear factor comes into
Hmm.
a lot of this, right? Well, I can't say no to this potential client relationship
Hmm.
because I need the revenue.
Hmm.
Well, then what you're likely doing is saying yes to something to say no to something else,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
So you really have to think about that across all 3 of these kind
Yeah.
of ideals, right? Is this relationship right for the way I want to do business?
Correct.
Am I treating people the way that makes me feel good about profiting from that?
Yeah.
And overall, is am I generating income in a way that also produces impact, right? So there's a little ecosystem in which all these things can live harmoniously, aligned with kind of your individual values and goals.
True, agreed. I remember when I worked in the wireless industry, and I would tell for a few years I was the top sales rep, and I would tell some of my coworkers, I said, if y'all come to me and say, hey, this is a new line, because that's where you made the money with new lines, and I say I don't want it, then you better take cue because it's probably somebody that I don't want as a customer because they're going to be more of a problem, more of a headache because I made a few dollars, and so sometimes again, everybody you may have to turn away for either it's not a good fit, either they're going to be a drain and you can't support them. So you got to look at a lot of those factors and just don't take everything just because you need
And that goes back to something you said earlier about that kind of like reactionary,
it.
right?
Hmm.
We go, and there's a lot of places in society where that's happening, and
True,
I could get on a big soapbox about that. That the pendulum just swings. We live in a world of extremes
we
now,
do.
and there's a lovely little happy medium and a fence that you all can sit on.
Yeah.
And I think that there's this idea of you can have enough
Hmm.
to live comfortably, leave a legacy, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you are part of the 1%. There's
Right.
a whole lot of comfortable area in between there.
Agreed.
And what I'd love to do is continue kind of building on this advice piece. If we use relationships over revenue, people over profit, impact over income as kind of foundation here. And that first piece of practical advice is if you own a business to pay yourself,
Yeah.
give us some more. What are the next 2 things that you would recommend somebody doing once they pay themselves?
Well, if as a business owner, I believe that you should, pay your people, fairly well. I mean, to keep them. I think it's a quote, and it came from Richard Branson of Virgin Mobile and Virgin Airlines, and it said something like this: "You should treat your people so well." And I'm kind of messing it up. You should train them and pay them so well that they want to leave, but it's so good where they are that they don't leave. Something along that line. And
It's the reverse end of the golden handcuffs that we talk a lot about on the employee side when they're like, "Well, I'd love to leave, but I just have these golden handcuffs." If you're
right,
an employer, you can slap those on some people and build some loyalty. So it's
true.
a little
That's
bit of a
true.
tricky situation, but it's showing that you value what they bring to your
Agreed.
organization. And I think that's true whether they are an employee, a W-2, or whether they're a contractor.
Let me ask you this. Let me throw a question out to you, Angie. Do you think what we just said, if an employer do that, they'll have less people with the mindset of no more Mondays?
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. With yes, but ooh, there's a yes, but for the most part, yes, because I do find that a lot of dissatisfaction in the workplace comes because people feel undervalued and underpaid for what they bring.
Yeah.
And there's a feeling of lack of respect there that causes the Mondays.
Yeah.
That said, it also creates a unique challenge to those who are unsatisfied by the work they're doing and money isn't the reason
True.
for that lack of
True.
fulfillment. And in those cases, it creates a
Yeah.
challenge for figuring out how you go do something else because you've been compensated so well. And in those situations, I'm actually going to circle it. Oh, I just stream of conscious to myself right back to a great full circle kind of thing.
Hmm.
In those kinds of situations, I think you can take some of these proactive, financial and fiscal
Hmm.
recommendations to use those golden handcuffs to put yourself in a position to have more options. so that you don't have to say, well, I have to go find the exact same pair of handcuffs to change jobs, because that's not going to be practical. So
Hmm.
I think it's a little bit of a double-edged sword, but in a lot of ways, if somebody's paying you your worth, it's not a bad thing. If you're not satisfied by that environment, you've got to create options for yourself. And this financial stuff we're talking about is how you do it.
Yeah, and to your point, I tell people, and I told you, I said I'm not a mechanic or construction. I told you that. So if you say, Troy, I want to hire you to be a construction worker for 250,000 a year, it's $250,000. I probably will work 3 months and then I will quit. Great money, but it's not anything that I desire. It's not my purpose. No,
Nobody can pay you enough to
right.
do that in the
Yes,
long
right.
term.
Yes. Because I'm going to be unsatisfied because that's not anything that gives me the satisfaction. So I agree. And so an employer has to also figure out money doesn't motivate everyone. So you got to figure out what motivates. I think, and what employers could do is start having more one-on-one and getting to know the people that they hire, what they care about, what interests them. And I think when you do that, it doesn't take a lot to do that. Just care about people. I think you will have more loyal people because they know you care about them.
And that in and of itself is a business financial move,
Yeah,
because attrition costs money. So
true.
now let's flip the coin. If I'm an individual in this whole environment that we're talking about, what do I do to put myself in a good financial position? Whether I'm a kind of an employee, or let's say maybe small entrepreneur who doesn't have, a whole team structure.
Hmm.
So more of it on an individual level, how does this stuff apply?
So one of the things I think COVID taught us, COVID taught us that there's times we need to pivot. It also taught us, and I hope people grab a hold to this, we should look at having multiple streams of income. So if a person has because business in life, you have highs and lows. You have times it's flowing. You also have times that it's not as flowing as much. And so I think an individual should have another stream of income. In the event a company shut down, it closed, you get laid off, you get fired, you are not dependent on a job to control your future. And I think that's where individuals have messed up. The business owner, I think they got to shift also, is even though they may have a business, they need to figure out different ways to generate additional revenue streams in that particular business. So if one is down, the other one is up. And so they could stay at least in a, what you call a level plateau. When one is down, the other one is up. It may be a time that both of them are up. It may be a time both of them down. But overall, I think if they make sure they're generating other streams, it will help them to continue to increase that cash flow.
Yeah. So the way I would put this is, if you're an individual, find multiple streams of income.
Hmm.
And if you are in business, no matter what size, diversify the way that income comes in.
Correct.
Right. So if I, for instance, I do a ton in the one-on-one coaching
Hmm.
space. Guess what? If I have to go get carpal tunnel surgery,
Hmm.
which I will need to do at some point, and I just keep putting it off, I'm looking at 12 weeks of not working. So, what do I do in the meantime? I either have to stack up a bunch of reserves, or I need group programs or products that people can buy online that create the consistency of that income. And so there's a way that you can create kind of a portfolio there for yourself, whether it's in, salary and investments,
Hmm.
or whether it's a product lineup you're kind of offering. That's great advice.
Yeah, and I want to add something to you what you just said. I like what you said. So you one of the things you're gonna look at maybe having on demand courses, so it's paying you a revenue. But also, I think businesses should also look at something called disability insurance. So there's two sides of disability insurance. You have one where it pays you a salary if you're well, it pays your income is usually about 60 to 70% in the event of a sickness or accident. So that's one side of it. Then you have another side, it's called business overhead expense. It's another part of it. So if you have business expenses like rent, utilities, and things like that, and you can't work because of sickness or illness, it would pay those expenses also. And there's two different policies. But they do cover two different areas. So those are some things that, again, unexpected. I think business owners should look at having in place in the event of something happening.
Well, and this is perfect because I wanted to go back to the 7 money milestones, and just revisit all of them. And basically what you did was take us back to point 2, which is the first place of action, because number 1 is financial education. And I'm curious in that lineup, just to remind everybody, education, protection, which is what we just talked about, emergency fund, debt management, managing your cash flow, and then growing and protecting your wealth. Where in that 7 is the overall hang up in the global ability to manage money for most people?
I think probably the emergency fund. I think because the statistics show, I think the numbers was 39% of Americans can't come up with $400 if they have a $400 emergency. So I think having that emergency fund, because so if you don't have the emergency fund, then it can put you in debt. So because you got to use a
Yes.
credit card.
So 3 and 4 can perpetuate each other if you're not prepared.
Correct. Yeah. And so, and then if you do have debt or credit card or something, and you had an emergency fund, you could put it on a credit card, say I'll pay it out in 6 months out of my emergency fund, because you can kind of stretch it out. If you have a credit card with no balance and it's not maxed out or anything like, so you could kind of strategize different ways. But I think that emergency fund is huge. And then the number 2 is protection. The reason why I say protection because a person passed and they don't have any and then they got children and so they don't have any life insurance, and so if the person passed and have life insurance, so it puts a effect on the family taking care of that. Then if they have disabled, they're in a car accident and they can't work, and so they don't have that. So I think those two are probably the foundation that may be very important to get in place. But when I work with people and these 7 money milestones, uh, everything is not done overnight. This is what I tell my clients, Angie. So excuse the expression, but you will get it. I tell my clients, I said, when you work with me, it's not a one night stand. It's a long term relationship.
I love it. Which it's a cheeky way of reminding everybody that most things in life, especially change, is a process.
Correct.
And that's really what this 7-step money milestones is creating a process and a framework to keep yourself accountable to different financial goals. And I think that I'm actually going to equate this, like the financial world and the career coaching world have the parallel in that there are about 97 varieties of Kool-Aid you could go drink. If you try to drink all 97, you're gonna be on a freaking sugar high. So
Right.
what I recommend doing is drinking one flavor,
Right.
Troy's or Angie's, and following that methodology. Because for the most part, we're generally educating people on the same stuff as our peers. We just do it in a way that resonates,
Correct.
with a different. And if you try to go out and continue, like, okay, I'm gonna go follow Troy, but then I'm gonna go look at the advice of 17 other people, you're gonna get like all convoluted. And this is a very simple process of which you're not going to get stood up for the second date. So I love it.
And to your point, what you just said follows. So there's I don't want to call the name, and I don't want to be negative about him, but he's a well known.
As soon as you went into that, I know you're talking about. I'm not going to say it either.
So he's great on debt and getting out of debt. Okay, he's great on that. However, when he starts talking about life insurance, uh, his advice is not good because he's not sitting down one on one. He don't know the details of your situation and why we did this.
There's a level of nuance there that, to an extent, mass delivered advice can work. But like, if we go back to your 7-point framework, it got us to number 4.
Mhm.
Now what do we do? Right. And that's where having somebody and here we come. Here goes shameless plug, Troy. Here we go. So having an individual who can support you in understanding the assets you have or don't have, goals that you want to achieve, and how to create a personalized strategy to get there is amazing. which I think is an excellent point to say. You give out more advice and some of your strategies on your own podcast. So tell everybody, and I'm going to be on it, everyone. Hasn't happened yet. It's going to be in a few weeks. So I don't know how this will work as far as like the timing of the two episodes, but tell everybody how they tune into that.
Yes. So my podcast is called Troy Talks. You will find it's kind of like me and Angie's a conversational style podcast. I have various different people in different industries. You can find it on Spotify, Apple, Google. So on your major streaming platforms, you can find it. Troy Talks, and then the website for it is the troytalks.com.
And how do people tune into you from if somebody's out there saying, I like this guy and I need a financial advisor?
Sure.
How, in addition to the podcast, do they find and connect with you?
They can find me probably one of the best ways. I'm very active on LinkedIn. They can reach out to me on LinkedIn. And also, Angie, and I didn't realize you and I was connected as a first level. So I don't know when that
Oh
happened.
yeah.
Yeah.
So you follow the two of us. We're gonna fill up your news feeds with great career and money advice.
Correct. Yes. Yes. Also, you can go to my website. It's troyholt.com. And you can set up an appointment through my calendar on my website. But if you want to reach out to me directly, like if you're on LinkedIn, DM, and I'm on LinkedIn as Troy Holt. I'm also on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. I'm on all social media platforms, basically. But LinkedIn is probably the best one, and then also my website.
And of course, you can find Troy as part of my network on LinkedIn. And we're going to take everything that he just shared and we'll put all of those in the show notes at nomoremondays.info, including both links to the site and links to the podcast so that you can tune in for the interview with yours truly. But I think that this is a very important topic for many people, whether you are in, a career as an employee or an entrepreneur. And breaking down the fear and intimidation
Mhm.
around financial planning is a welcome, element that I'm really happy to now have you as a resource in my network for everybody out there who's like, okay, I want to get myself in a better financial position so that I have options
Yes.
to change and don't feel stuck. Because a lot of
Yes.
times that's why people feel stuck. I want to make a change, and
Yes.
it's mostly money that comes into play. Troy is a wealth of resources, so I hope you will tune into the podcast and find all of his good stuff online. I know he puts together some good programs and special kind of one-off stuff that you should keep in touch with too. And there's so much good stuff in here. The seven pieces of the money milestones I think are the number one takeaway. It's like parts 1 through, it's 1 through 7. But that's an amazing takeaway from this episode. However, let's take everybody out with one more big piece of advice, pearl of wisdom. What is your number one recommendation on what everybody out there can do to get one step closer to career and life satisfaction?
I've already said it, and I'm not going to stop. Every time this is asked, pay yourself first. Start today.
Pay yourself first.
Yes.
Yes. Go get yourself set up on Gusto, everybody. That's what I use. If you want a referral fee, I think we both get money. Shameless plug. But pay yourself first. And I actually am going to go so far that even if you get paid by someone else, adopt this mentality of like paying yourself first. So one of the things I was going to bring up earlier, and I will just as we kind of wrap this up as a good frame, as a good just addition to this, is from a business perspective, I follow a profit first framework, which is not only do I pay myself first, I also set aside a certain amount of money into a profit account for the business.
Okay.
And you can apply that same kind
True.
of framework
True.
to your personal life. That's where the emergency fund and everything like that comes in. And so pay yourself first, set up that emergency fund, and get yourself into a good financial situation so that you have options regardless of how big your golden handcuffs are.
Yep.
Right, Troy?
Love it. Love it.
That's a great way to take us out. Troy Holt, everybody. Thank you so much for being here and giving us just very good, practical, approachable advice on how we can be better with money and also reduce some of the fear around money that keeps us from thriving and reaching our potential, because we want people like Troy and I want to enable you to go after the things that you want to go after. The last thing you want to do is say, I'd love to do that, but I can't afford it.
Yeah.
And we're here to help you change that.
Yep. Thank you.
This was awesome. Troy Holt, thank you so much for being here, being part of
Thank
the
you,
No More
Angie.
Mondays movement, giving me a chance to share how the name even came to be. That was a nice little special ad. We always love hearing from people who have not only successfully navigated their own career crossroads, but are helping others do the same through awesome resources like Troy has to offer. Please head over to nomoremondays.info. You can grab the show notes and the links to everything we've talked about. And then subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a 5-star rating because it is a huge help to people like Troy and I who give
Yes.
these podcasts out to the world. So until next time, I hope you have a great week. No Sunday scaries. And I will see you next Wednesday for another drop of No More Mondays podcast.